Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Wayne Lewis, Commissioner at the Kentucky Department of Education, and welcome to this Superintendent's webcast. We're approaching the end of the school year. For many of you, you're already done. For some of you, you'll be concluding the year very soon, and so we're really happy that you're able to log on either live or for those of you who are watching a recording to watch us a little bit later. We have a really exciting webcast for you today. Lots of great information. We'll talk through preschool application system. We're going to talk a little bit about alternative routes to teacher certification, cybersecurity update, and then finish with some discussion on our online directory update. So to begin, I have colleagues with me, Andrea Bartholomew and Bill Buchanan, from the Office of Special Education and Early Learning, who are going to talk with us about the preschool application system.
Great, thanks, Wayne.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. We're going to now talk about the preschool application system, and we'll advance to the first slide. And we'll talk a little bit about the preschool application process that we have planned for 2020-2021. And this was in response to an evaluation of the state-funded preschool program conducted by the Office of Education Accountability in 2017. OEA found that the preschool program was effective. However, it identified many areas for improvement. Today we're going to focus on one of those areas, and that is the need to enforce KRS 157-3175 by implementing an annual evaluation and grant application system for the preschool program. What this means is that districts will need to complete and submit proposals that address all the required program elements of the preschool program. Our goal is to improve services by better aligning the district proposals for funding and improving program services and the quality of those services for all at-risk preschool students.
So the preschool grant application process will be a non-competitive grant application that will be submitted by school districts to KDE in order to receive grant funding to operate or oversee the operation of developmentally appropriate preschool education programs. KDE is reviewing potential platforms to align our monitoring oversight. This includes looking at the KDE Grant Management Application and Planning, or the GMAP system. Many of you are already familiar with that system, as that is used for IDEA and Title grant applications. This new process, again, will help us to ensure compliance with our requirements of KRS 157-3175. District participation in this process is going to be vital. The KDE has already asked a group of 10 preschool coordinators to join us for a stakeholder group meeting at the end, actually, of June 2019. And that group will continue to meet, and there'll be other opportunities for district personnel to come in and to provide feedback and guidance and insight to this process. That could include anyone from a preschool coordinator to a superintendent, a site level administrator, even a teacher. We want to make sure that everyone understands the process and everyone understands why we are looking towards this grant application process before we ask districts to complete these forms.
So with that, we appreciate the time today to share this new application process, to raise awareness about this new process. And we now open it up for any questions you may have about this new application process or the state-funded preschool program.
Right, and if you want to send questions to us, you can go to GoSoapbox. That information is on the screen. Send us your questions, send us your comments so that we can respond. As you're sending those in, give you an opportunity to send those in, though I want to just reemphasize a couple of the points that Andrea and Bill made. One, is this change in the preschool application process is coming as a result of that OEA evaluation. But the OEA recommendation is for us to enforce the statute that has been on the books already. This is not a new law. This is not new statute. This is not regulation. This does not come from the Kentucky Board of Education. This is Kentucky law. This is Kentucky statute. And we are now interpreting that correctly to mean that there is to be an annual evaluation, annual application and evaluation process. As Andrea said, though, this is not a competitive grant. It's a non-competitive grant, meaning every district has the opportunity to apply and receive funding to support your preschool services. So Jessica, have we any questions yet? Okay. Well, please do send us, if you have additional questions on the new preschool application system, where that's headed, please send those in. We may have time at the end of the webcast, and we'll return. Bill and Andrea will be here, and they'll be able to answer questions for you. Thank you both.
Thank you.
So we want to move to a conversation on alternative routes to certification. As you know, we've had quite a bit of conversation over the last couple years about teacher shortages. We know that there have been critical shortage areas across Kentucky and across the country for some time. Some of those areas include special education, career and technical education. But more recently, depending on the school district, depending on the region, we are seeing shortages in areas that we've never considered before. Shortages in areas like elementary school teaching. Superintendents, you know that better than we do. We're getting this information from you. One of the ways, not the only way, but one of the ways that we can help to address these critical shortage areas is with the alternative routes to teacher certification already on the books. The Kentucky General Assembly has provided 8 options for alternative certification for teachers in the state. Quite frankly, across the state, I don't think we've done a great job of publicizing them. I think lots of these are routes that are unfamiliar to superintendents, to potential teacher candidates. And so with us to discuss those routes today, we have Amanda Ellis and Crystal Horde, who are going to discuss alternative routes with us. Thank you both.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to turn it over to Crystal so she can walk through those options. Crystal, I know you get a lot of phone calls every day about those, and so we'll definitely give you an opportunity to share those, answer questions, and then Dr. Lewis and I can also just continue to add to the opportunities that are coming forth, and we definitely want you to mention those as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Amanda and Dr. Lewis. As Dr. Lewis stated, there are 8 options to alternative certification for initial teacher certification. It's important to know that these are for initial teacher certification and not a pathway for an existing teacher to add additional certification. There are other pathways for that as well. Option 1 is exceptional work experience. Candidates with exceptional work experience in a profession, in an academic content area that have a minimum of a bachelor's degree with a 2.5 GPA cumulative may be eligible for this pathway. A lot of times we get questions about this route if the person has been a teacher in the classroom. This is not a route for classroom teaching experience, but like maybe a veterinarian that wants to be an agriculture teacher or a biology teacher. There's lots of different pathways to get there, but this would be for an academic content area. Option 2, the local district training program. Currently, there are no Option 2 programs approved by the EPSB at this time. This is one that's currently under review by the Office of Educator Licensure and Effectiveness, and we hope that within the next few months that we're going to have this program up and going again.
Yeah, and I'll say a word about that, Crystal, and this particularly because this is the superintendent audience. Mm-hmm. The General Assembly has provided Option 2 so that local school districts can in fact develop teacher certification programs. To my knowledge, I think there's only been one school district, historically Jefferson County, that once took advantage of this. But this is a route that's on the books, and so as we're thinking about ways that we can get additional credentialed, qualified people into the classrooms, for school districts that have the resources, the capacity to build high quality programs, this could be a route for you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Option 3 is the college faculty route for certification. This one is quite popular. Candidates who have a minimum of a master's degree in an academic content area and have at least 5 years of full-time teaching experience in the content area at the college level may be eligible for certification for this for their specific content under this route. I may have neglected to say this on the option 1, but like option 1 and option 3, these two routes do require an offer of employment from a Kentucky school district. Sometimes that's a tricky situation for a person who's trying to get employed, because how do they get employed if they don't have a certificate yet? But many times if they send us their documentation, we can review it and tell them if they meet the minimum requirements of the statute, give them an email that then they can take to the hiring official at the school district that can assist them with that employment. Option 4 is the adjunct instructor certification. The adjunct instructor certification does not lead to a professional certificate in Kentucky. However, it does allow those who have expertise in a minimum of a bachelor's degree with a major or a minor in their content area, and meet the other qualifications to teach on a part-time contract basis. This is a 1-year certification that can be renewed on a year-by-year basis as needed when the school district comes up with these needs. This has also been used in the area of career and technical education to bring industry professionals from that workforce in to teach certain areas, because a lot of times they may not need that person for a full-time position, but they might need them to fill a need that they may have.
Yeah, this is one of those areas that I think has been underutilized as well. I was talking with a school district not too long ago who was telling me that there's an practicing attorney in town who wanted to teach a course and teaches that course once a semester, keeps his job, but comes and teaches that course. There's not a need to actually earn certification because they can use that adjunct instructor route. I think it's one of those areas that we could think about much more in the area of career and technical education as well, as we struggle to get folks who are willing to leave oftentimes lucrative positions.
That's right.
Depending on how much they want to teach, they may not need to leave the position.
Right.
That's right.
And so again, this is an area I think we need to have a lot more conversation about how we can use it.
The beauty of the option 4 also is that it doesn't require enrollment in a program. They don't have to go back to college. They should already have met the requirement to qualify for this route.
And I think it's probably much more affordable for districts as well,
Yes.
because they may not have funding
Yes.
for a full-time position, but maybe can offer some more opportunities for their students with experts, and professionals in their own community. So
Right.
It's
Absolutely.
a great one to push.
Option 5 is the Veterans of the Armed Forces route. This pathway to certification is for veterans that meet the minimum service requirement of 6 years of honorable service with an eligible military service. That includes active duty, reserve, and National Guard. It can be in a combination of that service also, or between those different branches of service. They have to have a minimum of a bachelor's degree in the academic content area, or they must meet the praxis testing requirements. This was a change in statute in 2017. It used to be that they would have to have the degree in the content area and pass the test, and that became an either or. So they could have a degree in history and qualify that way, or if they have a degree in general studies, but they're able to pass the assessment in the content area that they're wanting to pursue, they can obtain it that way. Once again, though, it does have the minimum GPA requirement. Option 6 is the university-based route to alternative certification. This is the route that most people are familiar with, commonly referred to as the MAT route, Master of Arts in Teaching, although there's many more institutions in the state now that offer this pathway as a certification-only route with the waiver of the rank 2 requirement. Individuals who hold a bachelor's degree or a master's degree in a non-teaching major and who are interested in attaining initial teacher certification can be admitted to this program. They must, again, have a GPA minimum of at least a 2.75. You can be admitted to the university-based program without having a job offer, but you don't qualify for the teaching certificate until you do have a job offer. And typically, the districts will, the candidates that they see will have a letter that the university provides them with that states that they are eligible for the certification. So that we tell the districts, look for that letter that confirms their eligibility in this program. Option 7, this is the institute alternative route. Once again, similar to the option 2, there are no current option 7 programs approved by the EPSB at this time. The guidelines for this program are to be reviewed, but right now we're still in the development stages with the Division of Educator preparation on this route.
This is another powerful route on the books that permits an entity to create this boot camp of sorts for folks who meet the conditions required by statute and get someone certified. Something that you don't see in a whole lot of states. One of the things I was shocked with as I came to understand the options, including option 7 and option 2, was really how flexible the General Assembly has been with giving us alternative routes to certification. We're going to need to step up as a state and start to utilize these alternative routes much more.
Absolutely. Lastly is the option 8 Teach for America program. Teach for America has been around for a number of years around the country. It's been in Kentucky in the Appalachian part of our state, I believe since 2011-2012 school year. They are a national nonprofit organization that recruits, trains, and supports outstanding recent college graduates for career placement in participating school districts within the Appalachian region of Kentucky. This is also probably an underutilized option. I don't know that many of the Appalachian region school districts know that this is an option. The ones that do use it a lot, and we've heard really good comments about it. If you are in that if you are a superintendent in that region of the state and you're not aware that this is an option, I would welcome you to contact me. I can give you the contact information for our program coordinator in the Appalachian region, and she would be more than happy to point you in the right direction. But this can be for any content area. There really is no stipulation requirement as far as other than that the candidates have to pass they have to meet TFA program requirements to be admitted to their program, but their standards are so high, the GPA is not an option. They do have to meet their praxis test before a first certificate can be issued, and they have to have a job offer. But many of the school districts in eastern Kentucky, they welcome the opportunity to have these teachers come in.
Right.
I think one of the things that stands out to me, Crystal, is the people we hear from. Wayne, I know you hear it, and especially we hear from you all when we come to visit, is we don't have any applicants and we're struggling.
Right.
This is the big issue, not just in one region of our state. We hear it across, even down to health and PE teachers and teachers that we've never had issues with, many of what you have described before. And so I really encourage you to really dig into these options. Crystal's an amazing resource. She knows these options frontwards and backwards, and so do her staff. They can help you, they can guide you, but please don't think you have to wait for somebody to come apply, because it may not
Right.
happen. And many of you all tell us that we have posted the same job 3 years in a row and nobody's applied. And so this may be a real way to think about the resources within your own community or your region, and think about ways that you could really build up some of your teaching field in a very alternative way
Right.
than what we're used to. We're very used to traditional means for acquiring teachers. We want quality, and that's a part of what's coming up next of what we're going to offer as support. But I really think these options are viable.
Right.
And really have yielded some success in many areas. Would you agree from
Absolutely.
who you talk to?
Yes. We're always trying. I I like to consider myself, and we all do in our department, problem solvers. We want to help the school districts find a way to make something happen, and look at, especially now with the changes that we've undergone in the last 6 months, finding new ways to make things happen, with resources that we
Absolutely.
didn't previously have. So yeah, if there's any questions regarding the alternative routes, certainly let us know.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Crystal.
So,
I think we have a question.
okay.
Yes, we have one question, and it's just, can you provide more information about option 2? What are the minimum requirements for districts to develop this option?
Well, the Option 2 program, the previous Option 2 program was referred to as the ACES program in Jefferson County. That program has since sunset, and our division of educator preparation, assessment, and internship is working with our board to look at new ways to present this program. I'm not going to be the expert on what that program may entail, but if any superintendents are interested in pursuing that, then make sure that you contact our office, contact me, and I can put you in touch with the right person who would be who can give you more information on that.
And I want to encourage superintendents and school districts that are interested in this route as well to contact Crystal. Contact us. This is one of those routes that I don't think we've done a great job of talking about, of helping people to understand. And so, we're really at the beginning stages as well of exploring what the possibilities can be. One of the things I think has been unfortunate, and we have to do a lot of myth busting around this, is the notion that alternative routes to certification, as we're discussing today, are in place to put educator preparation programs out of business. In most cases across the state, when you think about the conversation we're having about critical shortage areas, superintendents know it can be the difference between having an alternative certified teacher or a substitute teacher. It's very seldom the case that it's the choice between a teacher who's gone through a traditional preparation program at an EPP, is finishing from Moorhead, finishing from University of Louisville, versus an alternative certified teacher. It's the case of an alternative certified teacher or no teacher. That's really the severity of the shortages that we're experiencing, and so we're going to have to think out of the box about how districts, how preparation programs, how nonprofits can play a larger role in creating avenues to get teachers into the profession.
That's right. And this has been an ongoing conversation that we hear. And so one of the things that we are doing that's coming up actually next week is that we had a request from a group of superintendents to help with recruitment and retention of teachers. And so we are working with the Urban Schools Human Capital Alliance, or they have an academy. It's not just about urban schools, it's really their entire work is around recruitment and retaining those teachers. And so that is a challenge. It's an ongoing challenge. And when you do bring in teachers from different alternative certification options, they have different experiences that they bring to the table and different needs, just like every teacher who comes in from a traditional track also has specific needs. And so what we've done is we've worked with a small think tank group that consisted of superintendents and principals and human resource directors from all across the state, sharing their concerns, sharing what would be most beneficial. And so the Human Capital Alliance team have done a really great job of creating a Kentucky toolkit that they're going to walk through. They're really tools and strategies that districts can use, no matter if you're small or large, of really being intentional around your recruitment. But once you've recruited those teachers, what do you do with them? And we find that retention is the greatest pain to recruitment. If you didn't have to recruit as often, then you really have to have strong retention strategies. And so that's what we're looking at. We're going to be hosting a session. It's free from 9 to 3:30 Eastern time next week. June 13th. I know next week is a huge professional learning week with standards and all kinds of things. It's at the Capitol Plaza Hotel. We'll have that toolkit available, but we really encourage you to send someone from your district or your schools to really think through. We target a lot on the principals, how they have to recruit and retain, be intentional about that at their school level, and then of course at the district level, and what type of supports do you offer. And there's some people who do amazing work and others who really haven't put a lot of thought into their human capital. And now is the time. It's a really critical need. We hear it from across the state, whether you're in a large affluent district or you're in a very small rural district with limited resources, we're hearing the same cries. And so we really encourage you to come. We'll promote this toolkit absolutely. And this is just one step towards the way that we're going to really be promoting these options and promoting really the teaching field and how we have to look at it differently to really meet the needs of our students in our schools. So I appreciate it. And thank you, Crystal, for coming. Excuse me, I was thinking of that. We
I
have
think we
another
have an
question.
additional question.
Have you seen an increase in emergency certification?
Absolutely. Yes, we have had several districts that are seeking emergency certification, some for the first time. We've had some districts who have, prior to some of these other options being available, namely the proficiency evaluation option, which just started becoming available in April with the approval of the first 3 institutions. This is for individuals to obtain initial or additional certification. We've had several districts that have had to request, waivers to get a second emergency to fill those positions so that they don't have to go unfilled or have subs in those positions. So it's definitely been a need, and we're, like Dr. Lewis said, we're looking for ways to think outside of the box and look for ways to fill those gaps.
That's all.
All right, thank you, Crystal.
All right, you're very welcome. Thank you all.
So next, we're going to move into an update from Associate Commissioner David Couch and Bob Hackworth to have some conversation on cybersecurity. We're incredibly fortunate in Kentucky to have not just state-level experts, but expertise that is noted and respected nationally. David and Office of Education Technology are routinely sought after and consulted from states and chief information officers across the country who want to know what their approach has been to keep schools safe in this era. And so we thank you guys for being here and look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Wayne. Appreciate it. Once again, David Couch. I've been the education technology leader in Kentucky here for over 25 years, and Bob Hackworth, who has played a variety of roles here in Kentucky, from a teacher to one of our technology field staff to leading our first virtual high school to our first big data system, launching a data system, to now cybersecurity. So we know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two over the years, and so some of you will recognize I've traveled the state, and you don't have to show the slide, this slide yet. Okay. I've traveled the state, going to different cooperative meetings, and I hit on this subject a little bit. So it's been a while since some of the cooperatives that I've been at, and we have somewhat of an update since that time, and we want to share that with you. So we have about 4 billion attempted cyber attacks here in Kentucky K-12 on the annually, and so that's about the same proportion we see across the country. When we take a look of how many of those are successful, it's actually a very small percentage. Not that we're trying to encourage any cyber attackers coming on it, but for the most part, we do a pretty good job from both the technical side and the people side, preventing actual successful cyber crimes. But we are having something, and this is Bob's term, which I agree. We are having a cyber crime tsunami in K-12, just not in Kentucky, but across the country. So the risk of that is just not the dollars that are potentially lost, but also the loss of trust of people in your organization and the embarrassment. And we want to help you avoid all those from happening. We're finding in particular these cyber criminals from around the world are targeting K-12. Someone has studied K-12 in particular about our organizational structure. They know that we're service oriented and we want to help very quickly. They've studied our processes. They're really studying who pays who and when they're paying them. And Bob is going to go through a couple examples here in a few minutes of how that's coming to be. And that's how they're being successful. And one of the ways they're being successful called social engineering. It's the people side of it. So when they're having difficulty breaking through the technical side, and Kentucky has one of the best barriers we put in place for a lot of things we've done over the past 20, 25 years, but the people side of it is what we have to work on. And there are some things that we're also going to talk about, beefing up the technical side as well. All these solutions that I'm getting ready to give you are at no cost. The first wave that we've done over the past few years is Kentucky developed something called the Digital Driver's License. We created it for elementary, middle school, and high school students, but we also encourage adults to go through that as well. And we're finding the cyber attackers are particularly targeting people in leadership positions, those that approve money being spent or decisions being made. They're targeting your finance staff organizations and those that are in charge of your data. I call it your top secret data that you would have in your organization. So the digital driver's license is just not for students, but it's for adults as well. And we give real examples. That was created here in Kentucky. 49 other states have adopted it. We created it in conjunction with the University of Kentucky. And so we encourage you. It takes about an hour, hour and a half to go through that. The examples we have folks go through are the examples of what's happened in Kentucky and across the United States. We also created a one-pager that we hope folks look at and keep beside them. And these are the things that what is considered a breach. How do you avoid having a breach happening within your organization? And if folks took a look at these, there's 2 or 3 ones that we say, don't let this happen. And folks have let that happen. So there's a good to kind of go over that. We also created a document. It can happen to you, but don't let it. Those are real examples of what's happened here in Kentucky and across the country. We're hoping to take, something that's unfortunate happen in one district so others can learn from it. But also there's some things we got to go back to old school on, where we're just going through and we're doing people confirmations of it. And Bob's going to give you an example on the direct deposits, some of the changes districts are making that we encourage more districts to make, as far as you may need to have a voice-to-voice or face-to-face conversation with folks, especially when they're going to change their direct deposit location versus just taking it upon an email request. The other ones we're talking about add a step. They don't add a cost, they add a step. Something called multi-factor authentication, specifically for folks in your finance office, your leadership positions, your technology staff in charge of data. It's kind of like what most of you have with your bank. If you try to do something with their bank, they typically send something to your phone and say, are you really who you say you are? And you give something, a second way to confirm your identity. We also have to do something across the state, and we have the means to do that. We've talked about it for quite some time. Changing the length of the passwords of certain key systems that we have and put in place, and changing the frequency that they're changed. Right now, we've left that to the option of the districts, but we've had discussions with the education technology leaders in those districts, and there's some things, at least at the state level, that we need to require, and we can require, and through the technology, a certain length of a password and being changed. Also, the stale accounts. These are accounts of people that have left. Cyber hackers and cyber crime folks look for those types of accounts because they can go undetected for long periods of time. And so one of the weaknesses we have in K-12 is we don't do a good job of keeping up with when people come and go, quickly removing their access to key accounts. And the cybercrime folks who have somebody involved has really studied us, just not here in Kentucky, but across the country, and is taking advantage of that. And also things like single sign-on. And that's the kind of thing we're looking at upcoming with Infinite Campus. If you log into one thing, it automatically logs into another one. So that makes sure you got to have your password as secure as you can when you have that capability. And also putting something we call self-service password changes on there. So what we quickly would do, typically this takes about a half hour, 45 minutes, so we're condensing it down. But I know there's a couple of the cooperatives that are having retreats, and they've asked us to come and speak with them. We call it the Bob and Dave Show, and we will do that. So Far Western Kentucky and Central Kentucky has asked us to come and speak more in depth with superintendents about what they need to do to prevent this from happening in their organization, and we will do that. Also, we've briefed quite frequently your education technology leader in your district, and so you can turn to them for advice. We also can come to cooperative meetings and brief, but also we also have field staff that can come directly to your district. Our intention, and we did ask this in a webcast question of all the education technology leaders last week, how soon do we want to implement certain aspects of this? For example, a forced password change and length. And given that we have a tsunami going on that's targeting K-12 in Kentucky and across the country, no later than October was the date that we picked. And also the single sign, I think, in the upcoming December timeframe. So we understand that this time during summer break is a tough time to do it, but we want to do it as soon after the school year begins. So Bob, you're going to give some specific examples, and I think you have a couple of slides you want to take on forward.
And before I get started, I do want to say that, and I think it's worth noting that we're not talking just about hundreds of dollars here and there being lost. We're talking about everything from hundreds of dollars all the way up into the millions, the multi-millions of dollars being lost in a single security incident. So that's why I think this is so important for everyone to kind of keep at the front of the stove, on the front burner, if you will, and for us to be thinking about it. And the best news about this is that there are things that, as you mentioned, that we can do for free, that districts can do for free, that your staff can do for free, to really reduce or minimize the occurrences of these happening across the state and within each district. So there's unfortunately not a magic wand that we can just throw out there, but there are things that every district can and should be doing. Some of the threats that we are seeing, and David has mentioned passwords quite a bit, but passwords really are where the rubber meets the road between the human and the technology. And what we're seeing is crooks either guessing passwords or tricking people out of their passwords, and then using those passwords to pretend to be those people, and then have data or money or both or something like that done because they look like, at least in an email, the people who have the authority to send money or to request data. Whether it's W-2s around tax time, we have that every March and April. We have lots of folks who are getting emails from what look to be superintendents saying, send me all your W-2s. And so we have something similar now with superintendents and principals saying, go out and buy $1,500 worth of iTunes gift cards and send me the pictures from the front and the back. And that's a way to launder hundreds, if not thousands of dollars very easily and very quickly. And so that's one of those things that we really want our staff to understand. No one's going to be asking you to go out and buy iTunes gift cards. But a lot of folks don't really know that that's the case.
And we're not talking about theory, we're talking about real things that have happened.
This is real things that have happened in Kentucky districts. I'm not talking about California, New York, this is Kentucky, and these are the examples that I would be sharing.
And with the superintendent, you have a teacher who gets contacted, I think by the superintendent, says, wow, the superintendent is contacting me directly and entrusting me to go buy this, and it's not really the superintendent.
And it's not really the superintendent at all. And I think that we just need to have a little bit more, I almost hate to say it, but a little more suspicion on some of these emails that come across our desk before we just immediately go off and do that. And I don't know, I've not talked with any superintendent myself who said, I would rather them do it immediately versus check up and make sure that it's exactly what I want to have happen. I mean, everyone has said, I'm willing to wait a little bit just to make sure that this is real and authentic. And I think that's a key point to make here. One of the other interesting scams that we've seen, and you mentioned this, is the direct deposit scam, where a crook will send an email pretending to be a staff person to someone in your HR department, someone in the finance department, and say, I really need to change my direct deposit information from the bank I currently have to another bank. And for a long time, I think those were just sort of like, yeah, sure, we'll do it. And unfortunately, that's still happening. And the crooks have discovered that there's very little checks and balances on those requests. And we need to put some checks and balances back into those requests. And some districts have gone to requiring that people show up and request that face-to-face. Some districts have decided to implement a 2-pay period paper check process, so that when the staff person gets a paper check, it raises a question, why am I getting this paper check? And so that allows them to know that something is up before their paycheck is just sent to some bank in North Dakota, which again actually happened here. We've had multiple districts who have had staff, lose 1 or 2 or more paychecks, and then the district has to reimburse them
So
somehow.
I think the interesting about this one is they don't necessarily have to be in a real email account. So we had one
Correct.
district where they had gotten in and somehow the person had given their email account credentials, and so it looked really like it was them.
Yes.
But we're seeing it's not really their real account. If you hit reply, you would see it's not them. But also what I find fascinating in the process, the folks that are requesting the direct deposit change, their current real direct deposit location is not really listed. But the one they want to change it to is real. And so I was
Yeah.
wondering, how are they getting the real one? And they're not.
They're
They're just
not.
putting it in fake numbers.
They just make it look like a real
Right.
request.
And so the person in the finance office says, well, that number must be real, looks kind of real, but the scam number is for real.
That's right. And so I think if we just spend a little more time on those requests and make sure they are authentic before they're approved, that makes a big difference, and that will go a long way to eliminating those. And then, lastly, I wanted to mention that it's another big one that we've seen is crooks pretending to be vendors and sending the vendor's change of address and payment information to the district. And what that does is if a district is in the middle of a large project, such as a construction project or a building wiring or something like that, and a crook understands that that's happening, that crook has looked at your district, knows who's in the front office, knows who the finance people are, because all that's on our websites, and then understands who won the contract and what their address is, and they can even pick a name from that company and say, hey, guess what, I'm so-and-so from this company, this construction company, we're changing our billing address and our payment address, start sending your payments to this new address.
And I find it interesting too, they're so closely watching, they're understanding the timing of the normal payment. So they're watching normally X million or X 100,000 goes to this company on this date in this month. And so in this one particular instance, they timed it so it went a couple of days before that. So it really wasn't out of the ordinary.
That's right. And the way to try to minimize that is to call your vendor. If something like that happens and there's a sudden change of address that is out of the ordinary, wasn't part of the contract, call your vendor using a number you know, not that would be in the email requesting the change, because that could be a fake phone number.
What I also say in our one pager that I talked about earlier, the two examples that we give is if it has a link and you click on that link and there's this big form and it requires you to fill some stuff out along with financial, it's probably not
That's
real.
probably not real, exactly. And so again, just adding a little bit of suspicion to all of this and just making sure by verification, using your voice is probably the best way to go about inhibiting these schemes. There are some others involving, again, going back to password, where we've seen again in Kentucky a crook crack into someone else's account and order workstations, computers from that district. And they were going to be delivered to lots of other places. It just so happened in this instance, one of the vendors noticed that the address that the crook had given was not the address that they knew the school district would receive them at. And so this vendor fortunately put the correct address on a shipment of workstations that the district had never ordered. And that's how they discovered that this was happening. And it turns out that there were close to like $250,000 worth of workstations that had been ordered under this district's name, and they did manage to stop that.
Well, I thought it was pretty gutsy, whatever you want. They picked a warehouse close to the district to have these computers shipped to. So they were part of it and were somehow knew exactly where to do it and pick it up and then take off afterwards. So
It seemed reasonable.
The teaching point here is for your technology staff, if they have super user privileges, and they'll know what that means, They got to have a regular account for their regular stuff that they do, and a separate one for their super user, and not a combination of the two.
And again, it also shows that you need to keep those accounts that have the authority to approve data and dollars being sent need to be very tied down, need to be very tight and very secure. And those folks need some exceptional training on these sorts of scams and others.
Well, that's a good stopping point. Just a reminder that we can come, and I know this is on the radar screen of folks, and spend time with you. We want to prevent it, and there's a way to do it. And this happens to good people. And we're finding, but they're taking advantage of our trusting nature, our service nature. They're studying our processes, so it's just got to be on, high alert. But also, there's some simple things we can do at a no cost.
That's right.
And we don't want people to be paranoid.
That's right.
But,
Not at all.
But in this era, we want people to understand that cybersecurity, we need to attend to the same way that we wouldn't leave physical doors open.
Right,
Exactly.
And invite
Exactly.
theft,
Yes.
same thing.
Yeah.
So really appreciate you guys being here. Jessica, do we have any questions come in? So if any questions come in for Dave and Bob, we'll have them here for the next couple of minutes and invite them back up. We do have the last part of our conversation will be led by Jessica Fletcher, our Chief Communications Officer, who's going to talk with us a little bit about our online directory.
Good
Welcome,
afternoon.
Jessica.
Thank you. I just wanted to quickly go over something that we're doing a little bit differently. In years past, KDE has printed a school directory and a directory of KDE staff members. Due to funding cuts, we're no longer able to print that, but we have spent the past several months developing the online directory for KDE staff. And of course, we always have the open house site for our school directory available online. So just wanted to show you that the staff directory is brand new, and we've changed a few things on our directory on our website, which is under the communications tab. This shows where you can click to access the open house public schools directory, the non-public schools directory, and then the KDE staff directory. You also have a link to the school report card suite, and then the bottom of this page shows the KDE management directory, so you can access contacts for all of our associate commissioners, the commissioner, and all of our chief officers here at KDE. The staff directory, you can search all of our roughly 400 staff members that we have by name, by title, email address, and you can find desk phone numbers for all of these people, and in most cases you can find a little about what they do if you're looking for somebody kind of in a keyword search. It's fairly easy. You just go to the find box, and it will help you sort through what you're looking for. And then this is just a quick screenshot of the school directory where you can access contact information for each of your districts and contact information for the folks who work in the districts. Like I said, all of this is available at education.ky.gov/com/contacts, and you can also access the open house site from that web page as well. And that's all I have.
All right. Thank you so much, Jessica. We do have some time remaining, and so we are happy to take questions on any of the areas that we've discussed today. And if you have questions that we're unable to answer immediately online, then we'll make sure to follow up with you and get you some additional information. So do we have any questions?
We had some questions come in earlier about the preschool part, and they were all dealing with funding. All three of the questions that came in said enrollment has increased, but funding was cut. Will this new process include more funding?
The process that we have described for you today is solely the application process. Funding for preschool, just like state funding for schools, is appropriated by the General Assembly. Kentucky Department of Education has no funding that is not appropriated by the Kentucky General Assembly. And so, no, the process that we've discussed is simply the application process for the preschool funding that's been allocated. Your point is well taken regarding funding for public preschool. Obviously, that's going to be something that we continue to advocate for as we move into the next session, this budget session of the Kentucky General Assembly. We're going to have some conversation with the State Board of Education tomorrow as we start to put our budget together. And so, yes, absolutely, and we agree with you. We're going to need to continue to ensure that we're serving more and more kids. One of the challenges that we've had over the last couple years is, as a whole, I think we're not quite serving as many kids in public preschool as we were maybe it's about 10 years ago. We're not quite back to that number, and so yes, we have had increases over the last couple years, and we want to continue that trend. But we're digging out of the place where we had a huge dip in enrollment in public preschool. Being able to show the Kentucky General Assembly those numbers are continuing to climb is important to being able to make the case for additional funding.
No more questions right now.
All right. So if there are no additional questions, we will go ahead and close. We will thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. And more than anything, thank you for the incredible school year that we are concluding. I have the privilege as commissioner to travel the state, to spend time in districts and classrooms with educators, parents, and leaders across the state. And some of you have heard me say that I never get tired of seeing teachers make magic in classrooms for kids. The work you do is so important, and we're so thankful for you for all of your time and your effort. So we look forward to seeing you soon. Make sure to take some time over the summer break to recharge your batteries, and we will be here to support you. Have a great summer, everyone.